There's something deeply satisfying about coming to the end of a good story. Right? There's something that there's this deep sense of satisfaction we get when we finally feel that good ending when we get to the end of a story. Yesterday was Star Wars Day, right? When we see Darth Vader save his son Luke, he's redeemed back to Anakin. It's a good feeling, for me personally, when in How to Train Your Dragon 2, when Pickup realizes that he needs to take charge of the tribe as the chief, that's super meaningful. In fact, these stories, they often impact us in ways beyond words can even describe. And the reason for that is deep down inside, all of us are hoping for our own happily ever after. That's something that we all desperately want in our lives, is to know that it's all going to work out in the end. Because I'll be honest with you guys, we live in a world that tries to convince us of the exact opposite. If you've been here, we've been talking about the pattern of history. And the pattern of history is awful. Violence and destruction and envy, strife, for people tearing each other apart, and at the end of it is death. These things can cause us to start to believe that happy endings, that living happily ever after is only something for a fairy tale. Excuse me, don't know where that came from. Where we start to be convinced that this is only something that can happen in a fairy tale. But we do have hope of a happily ever after. There is a true hope there. And it's that one day God is going to come and make a brand new creation. And so if you have a booklet, here's what you're going to write, just that first question. We can have a real and fulfilling hope experienced only by the grace of God. We can have a real and fulfilling hope experienced only by the grace of God. We can have a real and fulfilling hope experienced only by the grace of God. So here we're going to talk about three things today. Three things. God's new creation is going to be more real than anything we now experience. Second thing we're going to talk about is how God's new creation is going to be more fulfilling than anything we thought possible. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is how God's new creation can only be experienced by the grace of God. And so God's new creation is going to be more real than anything we now experience. It's going to be more fulfilling than anything we thought possible, and it can only be experienced by the grace of God. That's what we're going to talk about today. So look with me. This is Revelation 21, not 1. So 21 verse 1. 21 verse 1. So big 21, and we're going to start right there. This is the end. This is the last of the last, the end of God's story. So Revelation 21 verse 1. Here's what it says. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first earth and the first heaven had passed away. There was no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And so this is the idea that this new creation that God is making is going to be more real than anything we now experience. I don't know what first comes to mind when you think of what heaven is like. Typically we think, it's up in the clouds and there's harps, people playing harps, and there's angels with cute, chubby little baby cheeks. Maybe that's what comes to mind when you think of heaven. But what we see being pictured here is something entirely different. In fact, our hope is actually something much more concrete than that. When we die, we don't become angels. Angels are their own thing, their own different kind of creation. What we see here is a new heaven and a new earth. In the beginning, when Adam and Eve first sinned, heaven and earth became divorced. They separated. But what we see here is now the two have been restored back together, and the earth has been restored back to what it was originally supposed to be. And so no longer are there any natural disasters. No longer is there any decay. Disease is completely wiped off the face of the planet. the earth, just like we know it today, only it'll look a whole lot different because it'll be put back to the way it was supposed to be. And in this recreated earth, there's going to be a recreated city. This is the new physical Jerusalem, right? The city of peace, free from all of corruption that we typically see in a city. You know, there's going to be no foul smells. The buildings, they won't decay and fall apart and grow old. It's going to be a place where humans will finally feel at home and comfortable and safe. And so in this recreated earth, in this recreated city, there's going to be a people with recreated bodies. The real physical people laughing, playing, working, growing, even doing sport. Isaiah, a prophet back deep in our Bibles, he says that this day is going to be like a day where we'll run and we won't grow weary. You know, we'll be able to wrestle and we won't get gassed out. We'll be able to experience sport and life the way it was originally created to be. There won't be any decay. Our bodies won't fall apart and get old and die. In other words, this reality that God is bringing is going to be more real than we know right now. This is going to feel like a shadow compared to what God is going to bring someday. Even though this is going to feel more real than anything we experience now, here's the other thing about God's new creation. It's going to be more fulfilling than anything we thought possible. So let's keep reading. This is verse 3. Here's what it says. And I heard a loud voice from heaven, from the throne, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." Right, this is what it means to say that God's new creation is going to be more fulfilling than anything we thought possible. When God recreates his new earth with his new city, with his new people, he's going to come and live in it himself and be with his people. And with the very presence of God, that's what brings the most deepest and fulfilling satisfaction and fulfillment. Right? That's what brings an end to all death and all crying and all mourning and all of the awful things we see in the world. We're going to be able to experience sport the way it was originally be able to experience. There won't be any pride or arrogance. It'll be people enjoying their bodies, right? Taking great joy in the fact that they are in this new creation and celebrating it together. It's going to be like the satisfaction of seeing the end of a good story. C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, he gets this really well, I think, in the end of his book. This is the end. This is the very end of the last part of the Chronicles of Narnia. I'm going to read for us here. And I think he's going to nail it right on the head. Now, if you don't know the story of the Chronicles of Narnia, right, these kids, they climb into a wardrobe, and there's another world right behind this wardrobe, and we get to the end, and spoiler alert here, the kids all die in a train accident, is how the book ends, and it's going to describe here what that's like here for us. Here's what it says. It says, "Then Aslan, the great lion, turned to them. He said, 'You do not yet look so happy as I mean you to be.' Lucy said, 'We're so afraid of being sent away, Aslan. You have sent us back into our own world so often.' 'No fear of that,' said Aslan. 'Have you not guessed?' Their hearts leapt, and a wild hope rose within them. 'There was a real railway accident,' said Aslan softly. 'Your father and mother and all of you are, as you used to call it in the Shadowlands, dead. The term is over. The holidays have begun. The dream is ended. This is the morning.' And as he spoke, he no longer looked to them like a lion. But the things that began to happen after that were so great and beautiful that I cannot write them. And for us, this is the end of all the stories, and we can most truly say that they all lived happily ever after. But for them, this was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in this world and all their adventures in Narnia had only been the cover and the title page. Now, at last, they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which goes on forever and in which every chapter is better than the one before. God's new creation is going to be more fulfilling than anything we thought possible. That's what C.S. Lewis describes well for us. But here's the thing. Although God's new creation is going to be more real than anything we now experience, it's going to be more fulfilling than anything we thought possible, here's what we need to understand. It can only be experienced by the grace of God. Let's keep reading. Verse 5. He who is seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. And then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. And then verse 7, here's what it says. Those who are victorious will inherit all this. And I will be their God, and they will be my children. You know, one of the biggest questions people have about this topic is, when is it going to happen? When is this all going to take place? Tell me when it's going to happen. The short answer to that question is no one knows. In fact, Jesus even himself says that he doesn't know. Only God the Father knows. And even there's actually nothing that human beings can do to make this new creation happen. They can't stop enough wars. They can't cure enough diseases. No, this is only going to happen when God in his good timing decides it's going to happen. No, the better question to ask is, how do we get to be a part of it? Right? How do we get to participate in this new creation? And here's the thing. I hope all of us on Saturday go out and win all of our matches. That would be awesome. That would be great. That's what we're here training. We want to do well. But here's what we need to understand, is that there's nothing that we can do that would earn our way into this new creation. There's not enough wrestling matches we can win. There's not enough good deeds we can do. Nothing. Now, the truth is that the basis by which we participate in this future has already been accomplished. You know, when Jesus was on the cross, the last thing he said was, it is finished. It is finished. Everything that needed to happen for us to be able to participate in this future has already been done. And so there's only one response left for us. There's only one way to respond, and that's just to receive that truth. Right? To receive the gift of faith, trusting in Jesus. That's what true victory is. I hope we have a lot of wrestling victory this weekend, but true victory looks like trusting in Jesus. Right? That's why it says, to those who are victorious, to those who trust in Jesus, will inherit all this. Right? That is the upside down victory. So here's what that means. The work's already been done. Now we just get to go with joy and live it out. The same thing with this practice. Work's already done. Hay's in the barn. Now we just get to go with joy and go show everyone how hard we've been working. Just to go live it out. We get to do the same thing as we patiently wait for Jesus to come back and to make all things new again. We get to live out this life with great joy and great hope as we patiently wait for this to happen. In other words, we can have a real and fulfilling hope experienced only by the grace of God.